Hey everyone, it's Austin in the middle, and I hope you're doing well today. So I have here another video game review of a game that I recently beat after owning for a few weeks now. I recently blind bought it at GameStop with a really good deal and price due to a promotion they were having at my local store. So I wanted to pick it up and play it because when I looked at the case and the cover and the back cover, it had me enthralled and I needed to check it out. So I went in blind, not looking at any spoilers on the internet, and I'm glad I did so. So I have here a game called Foreclosed I want to talk about. So if you haven't heard about Foreclosed, I don't blame you. It's an indie game that released a few years ago. And I since of beating since I've finished beating the game, I've looked into thoughts on the game and like discussion around it, and I did notice that a lot of the discussion that people were providing for this game came around the time of release, and it seems like it kind of made a temporary splash and then was immediately forgotten, which is saddening, but I do get why that happened after playing it myself. But this is one of these games, right, that I knew going in that it's an indie game. I knew going in that this is probably going to be an acquired taste game, but I had no idea what to expect going into it. But I will say, coming out of it, it gave me something I didn't know I needed in video games, and we'll get into that shortly. But I will say, when it comes to using the expression mixed bag, that's what Foreclosed is in a nutshell, sadly. There's a lot of really cool shit in this game that I think is groundbreaking, and I would love, 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 love to see more video games try this out in the future. But I just need a better story and something better gameplay-wise to be had with it. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's not going to sound like the most positive review ever, but I do have some positives here with it. So if you're here to hear about the game, right, all you need to know about Foreclosed, and I'm going to keep this pretty much spoiler-free, is that you play as the main character, Evan Kapnos, who lives in this cyberpunk future society where there's a court system in the, I guess, metropolis where people live in the future that can auction off your identity, right? So Evan Kapnos wakes up one morning and discovers that he no longer has an identity. He can't log into, I guess, his home system that keeps track of his daily life. And when he learns this information, he decides to get up, to which he's greeted with a message saying, you need to go to the court now because your identity is being sold off, and we need you to do something for us if you want any chance of getting it back. And this sends Evan on a journey that we, the player, get to experience, where he uncovers a lot of truths about who he is, about this cybernetic implants within his body and the origins of said implants, and upgrades to be had throughout the game as he has to traverse essentially being weaponless and not knowing who he really is, and uncovering who he really is and gaining access to weapons and more abilities that he unlocks throughout the game to help him basically take down his opposition and end up to the final boss of the game, who happens to be, I guess, the leader of the court. And that's all you need to know, right? So yeah, very, very short and sweet explanation, but that's really this game, right? Without getting too much into details about the plot, I want to just talk about the game here for a minute. So Foreclosed is a game that's highly stylized and fabricated into the world of comic books. And what I mean by that is it quite literally, and I'm not exaggerating this, transports you into panels of a comic. There are so many scenes and parts of this game where you're forced to essentially carry out a panel of a comic on screen. Whether it's the box of a panel and you're just moving left across the screen to walk to give that pan in visual, or you're walking straight to get that collage effect, of maybe past memories or certain signage off in the distance, or you'll be in a mission or something and you're trying to do like a stealth um, move to get to one place or another, and you do it in a certain way to where it's captured in a panel like how you would view it in a comic book. I have never played a game to execute this idea in the way that this game did. Okay? And the idea has always appealed to me. I have played games similar to this with this idea in motion where you have to play in a comic book, right? But this is easily the best example of that. And if there's anything that you're going to remember about this game, if you go into it, it's going to be that and the crescendoing gameplay that you do get in the back half of the game when you start to unlock abilities with Evan Capnos' character. The gameplay surprisingly gets fun. And for this being more of a stealth third-person shooter hybrid game, if you had to put a label on it, on the genre, there are way better stealth games out there in the mix, don't get me wrong, and there's also way better third-person shooters, trust me. But mixing that in and some unique aspects with like some telekinesis and maybe some gun customization and planning out level to level, or I guess save point to save point, your gun modifications and your routes you're going to take so you can avoid some enemies or have some coverage from some enemies. That way you have leverage to take them out, is what you're going to remember this game the most for. Which, if at the very least, if that's what this game intended itself to be, it succeeds in that. And I can't say that I didn't have at least a moderately good time playing it, because I did, you know. So yeah, those are probably the big things that stick out to me. I will say the style of it being like a cyberpunk game, I don't know if you can tell here, it does kind of have that Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse look to it, or maybe Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, or Puss in Boots The Last Wish has all that vibe going on here. But in like a cyberpunk setting. The cyberpunk nature to this game does add a lot of flavor and character to it. The hand-drawn style to the artwork of this game is actually incredible in my opinion. I can understand to a degree if people find it to be acquired taste, because I'm not going to lie, some characters have like yellowed out faces and there's emotiveless expressions going on. I want to say to the cell shading nature as something like the Jet Set Radio Future game is, or anything like that. But there are some hiccups with the art from time to time when it comes to the characters. But outside of that, it's a very brightly lit and atmospheric game. When it needs to get dark and gloomy on certain levels, it does so. When it needs to be bright and vibrant on some levels, it's bright and vibrant. And I will say, on a gameplay perspective, the difficulty to this game is, I would say, comfortably like a moderate kind of difficulty. Since it's a stealth game, you are required to kind of wait out some threats on some parts of the game, because if you're too overzealous and you're trying to rush through, enemies will take you out one fell swoop and you have to go all the way back to your save point, which makes the attention to what you're doing the utmost importance in the game. And I say this with a lot of earnest behind my conviction here. You will need some patience with this game at times, I'm not going to lie, just to get to know where you need to go through trial and error. If you're not a fan of games that require you to maybe die a couple times or quite a few times to understand what you need to do to move and progress in the game, you're probably not going to like this. But if you don't mind that stuff like me, you're going to appreciate the challenge, which I will say this game at times had some challenge to it. So it made it rewarding when you figured out what you needed to do. And there's also some really cool experimental ways that the character navigates in the story that I don't want to spoil, but you'll know those scenes when you get there, that I thought were pretty cool and creative. on how they went about trying to show that on the game itself here. So yeah, that just couples with all the other added surprises I had in some parts to the comic book panel layout of the gameplay itself, and some progressively good challenging moments that the game provided once you start getting more abilities in the game. So yeah, I have some decently strong positives with the game, I would say, and that does contribute to my thought overall on the game. But I have to kind of weigh those with the negatives too. So this review is one of those that I don't like making most of the time, because normally when I'm in the middle of the road with a game or a book or a movie, it's not usually fun to review these kind of games. But for this, I do think that it's fun because the problems it has is kind of baffling and it makes me laugh. The first being the story in this game. For this being a narrative of the main character, Evan Capnos, and it trying to take you through the journey about him essentially getting his identity back and learning who he really is or has been all these years, right? Should be captivating. But I'm going to say this up front and center. The story here is very milquetoast, very bland, very cookie cutter, cliche, corny. There's a lot of stuff in here that really reminds me of kind of like a knockoff in between of Dredd, aka Judge Dredd, and a knockoff of something like Blade Runner. You know what I mean? Mixed with something new in the mix, you know. There's better cyberpunk stories out there. Way better ones, I should say, than this story. And I want to say the problem is not isn't necessarily the idea of the story or maybe the potential the story starts you off with. I just think as the game goes on, the story becomes more by the book, kind of narrating the level that you're playing instead of actually progressing the actual story and the meat that people probably wanted from a game like this. Which admittedly for me, you know, I've mentioned in the past, I love pick up and play games. This does have some elements to that, but this is easily a narrative focused game where the story is put as the impetus in the causation of the game, not necessarily the gameplay itself leading credence to the story, right? It's very rinse repeat stuff. Survive the level, beat the boss, hide from the drones, avoid detection, go in. I can't tell you how many times in this game you have to go through a freaking ventilation system, but good God. Go to a computer and turn on this button and activate this bridge so you can keep moving, stuff like that. You know, it's baffling. It's baffling, really, on just how this game did not care as much about the story as everything else. Stylistically wise, I can see why people say this is a style over substance game, because literally it is. And you can't convince me otherwise, because it's so blatant about it. They did not try with the story here, and I'll just leave it at that, because if I go any further, I'm going to have to start spoiling aspects to it, so I'm going to avoid that. My other big problem with it is that I'm just not a big stealth game fan, and I say this because growing up, one of the worst games I've ever played is Sneak King, which was one of those original Burger King games from the mid 2000s, right? That game is absolute dog shit. This isn't to that degree by any means, but it permanently scarred me from stealth games. It permanently scarred me from the appeal of them, because I just don't see how it's fun just to go hide from something if it's not a horror game. You know what I mean? Like, hiding in a horror game is different because there's thrill and you're being chased, right? In this game, you would think that you're being chased, but almost always you're just being shot at, right? And shot at by NPCs with horrible aim that you can literally, and I'm not kidding, you can just spam the A button and just forward dash, you know, do like a sprint front flip and like onto your back and slide, right? You can just keep spamming that, and avoid gunshots, rebuild health, and just keep shooting at them until they die. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. It's not fun. It's not a fun game to play. And when you do start to unlock abilities, while there are some moments that are challenging and can be rewarding, the gameplay is a lot to be desired. The fact that it's a stealth third-person shooter shouldn't deter you all the way. But you'll notice, like probably how I noticed, that if not all the missions in the game that involve you once you unlock your weapon in the game, require you to essentially camp out in one specific section of a map or a level, so that way you have a complete vantage point where you're able to crouch and look all the way across the map, so you can start just keep spamming the shoot button until the enemy finally falls down, and then you can move over to the next one, move over to the next one, etc., etc. It's not fun. It's just not fun. Even if you try to do the speed run route and try to throw yourself into the mix of putting yourself out there in front of these enemies, if you try to do that, that's where the game's difficulty is going to show its ugly head, because if you have like a 3-on-1 and they're all shooting at you, your health bar is very easy to deplete in this game, and the only way to do it is if you avoid being shot for a few amount of seconds and you can crouch in a safe area to rebuild your health. Which, by the way, coupled with that, there's a recharge system on your implants, as you'll see right here. I think there's an image right here. You have these implants that can help you see things through walls, so you can pick up I guess extra points to be able to use towards gun upgrades throughout the game and stuff like that. But if you get near like these I guess barriers of the map, the barriers of the map themselves force you to get away from them, because if you stand too close, it's going to deplete your implants. If you are using your weapon too much and rapid firing, it's going to deplete your implants. It's going to overheat you, and then you're going to get stuck in a haze where you can literally just get gunned down, right? None of that is fun. It's just not fun, right? It's kind of like a thing to keep in the back of your mind as you're playing, because you have to constantly be thinking about your implant meter, and you can't go into overheat, especially if you're trying to run into hostile enemies that are basically giving you a 3-on-1. It's almost a death sentence, right? So it makes the game pretty much like you camp out and just shoot people until the room's clear, and then you go run to the next place, camp out again, and it's just so repetitive. There are some levels that require you to keep track of certain things, like building a bridge to walk on and going over to a computer and moving things to connect them so you can go from this area to this other area so you can make it into a ventilation shaft or whatnot. And while that's kind of cool in concept, to traverse a level, it's not executed in a way that's all that enthralling, right? It doesn't really feel like the stakes are that high ever in this game. You would think that there are boss battles in this game, which there admittedly are, but the boss battles in this game are pretty much laughably easy. And the hardest thing about this game is literally traversing rooms with enemies that you'll take out, and then sometimes they can just instantly respawn and shoot you from the same exact place. So just doing that compared to the boss battles is lame to me. You know what I mean? Like, and coupled with that, like I already said, it's just boring. It's a boring game to play, gameplay wise. So yeah, and the story isn't all that good either. So yeah, that's basically all I have to say about this game. There's nothing really much else to say. And like I said, I hate making reviews about middle of the road games. But you know, there are some sound positives and there are some real big negatives to it. So it puts me perfectly in the middle. And where I settled with this game, I'd probably give it maybe a 3 out of 5 stars. And it's more on the lower end of that, but it's still in that I would recommend it to people. If you're a big comic book fan and you like dark and gritty games, give this a shot. You might like it more than I did. Fair enough. I do think that the style in this game is brilliant, though. I would love to see more games come out in this style, or maybe if they wanted to make a Foreclosed 2 and just completely revamp this first game, keep what worked, and go back and rework what didn't work and make an even better game, I'd be open to that too. But yeah, that's all I have to say about Foreclosed. So let me know down in the comment section if you've played this game before. Do you love it? Do you hate it? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.